whenever it goes.
Got it.
Right. Okay. All right, guys. So this is Fresh Perspectives. This is a program that we put on for Launch SA. For those of you that are unable to, get out and get advice right now, the idea is that maybe a forum like this can help you really think through some of the situations that you're dealing with, or really just be a casual way to just kind of have perspectives in your life that might help drive you to a new idea, a new action, something that really maybe opens a door for you, or maybe you just find something relatable that you can pull out for yourself. And so today we have Stephen Darby of Heavy Heavy. He's the creator of Heavy Heavy, which is a creative digital studio in town. I have three principals, and Stephen, or rather Darby, as he's known, is one of the primaries. And so you've been in business for how long is it? 7 years
7,
now?
yeah. As of
Seven.
this May.
As of
So
what? Sorry, you kind of
this
broke up.
month, this month is our seventh.
Oh,
Our
okay.
seventh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, I know that we've talked a ton. I count you as one of my best friends, and you're also a board member of Launch SA, which is really great. I'm glad to have your mind and thoughts and perspectives shared, especially as a business owner. And so, I know like I said, we've talked, and I'm pretty sure that you've always kind of said, you don't really know what business is, more or less, or how you're doing it right, or is there a right way, or any of that stuff. But I mean, you've definitely had some life lessons on this, and so I'm just kind of, if you don't mind, just kind of going into your background of how you
Sure.
got started in design, how you started the studio, and just what that buildup has been till today, if you will.
Yeah. So I guess very briefly, like my first design job was working at the mall at Crossroads Mall. Later moved that store to Westlakes Mall. Shout out to Westlakes. Um, and so, that was doing cleanup work at a t-shirt shop. There was a airbrush artist who worked right next to me. And I was, I think, 17 when I had that job. So I entered kind of, what I wanted to do very early, but bounced around occupations while I was learning the craft of design. And most of that work was in restaurants. And so, yeah, went to school in Illinois, came back, got married, started a family, started Heavy Heavy in 13 with Eric Ford and Jeanette Fernandez. And the three partners now are myself, Eric Ford, and Josh Seltzer.
Okay, cool. So I mean, really, how did you decide this was going to be the thing you wanted to do for the rest of your life? Assuming that really is the long game plan at this point.
Um, I don't know. I think certainly I'll do it for the rest of my life. I'm not sure when it became really like a conscious decision. You know what I mean? I think it was just something I was very interested in at it from a young age. The job at the mall presented itself. Um, in school, like my high school teacher, her husband owned the store, and she was like, "We're looking for somebody to like run these computers." And I had never used design software before, but I was like, "Hell yeah, that sounds like the coolest job ever!" Like you can make money hourly to draw stuff. You know what I mean? So the interest of it and the cool factor, I guess, to me, realizing that you could make a living doing it, I guess, kind of just made it the thing that I would do forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely feel you on that. So kind of fast forward. I mean, you have this realization that this is what you can do. What, like, when was that first moment? When was that first dollar exchanged, and you were like, "Oh shit, this is real." Like, someone has paid me to do this thing independent of working for some other person.
It would have been that same year. Like I know I was still in high school, so I think my junior year, I got connected with Bitter Magazine. It was like this small, independent, alternative news weekly kind of entertainment guide published by these kids out of SAC. Um, and I was doing page layouts for them, and they ended up paying me $50 to lay out a cover. And that was the first money I ever made. And they were, I mean, I looked up to them because they were a few years older and obviously they knew a lot more about what they were doing, but it was just cool that they saw value in paying somebody, especially their junior, to do that work, you know. But that was definitely a game changer. Like my first sit down businessy meeting was a local business here who did background checks. And I sold that guy a logo for I think $500, $600. And it was, you know, I was like 18, so it was the most money I'd ever had, really, like, especially all at one time.
Yeah. That first dollar can always be, the real eye opener for you. And
Sorry, I missed you. I'm not hearing you.
yeah, of course. So I was saying that as a creative entrepreneur, it can, that first dollar that you get really can make a difference to your long life outlook. And so, I think one of the misconceptions about creative work is that, it's, just somebody drawing me a thing, or, there's no respect of the value that you're getting. And so, when did you start to respect yourself in that notion? Like, oh, the work that I'm doing has an inherent value, and
Oh man,
I'm not
that
the
that came
$50 guy anymore.
yeah, that came much later, I think. And it's still something that I probably struggle with, right? Like I think I'm sincere when I say, you know, we make temporary art for temporary things, right? Like there is no legacy in um commercial art other than, you know, as long as the printed piece lasts or as long as somebody remembers it. So we don't have any kind of ego about that part, but I think valuing what you do, the value you deliver to someone else as a creative, um you know, in the immediate, like in the now, is the harder thing to kind of figure out. Like how much do you charge, you know, like how hard should you fight for what you think your value is. That stuff's super hard, and I think that's also something we still kind of struggle with.
Yeah, for sure. And so, moving forward a little bit, you were able to pick up work, and I guess, when did you decide that you really didn't want to do this alone, or how did the idea of a partnership come up to create a studio?
I think really just meeting Eric. I was on Dribble, this like bulletin board, almost like a Craigslist for designers or a dating app for designers even.
Yeah.
You post your screenshot or whatever, and then people like it or comment or whatever. Eric had just moved here from LA and was looking for like-minded designers to just kind of work with or hang out with or whatever. So we ended up meeting each other and really hitting it off. We just became really good friends. So um, we started sharing work, you know, and sharing clients. Um, and then just eventually started talking about partnering up, you know, and officially getting married, so to speak. Um, so we did.
Okay. And
But I think
so good.
the value of working with other people for me is I have someone that I can trust to give me. I mean, if I'm working with the right person, it's somebody I can trust to give me feedback that matters, right? Like who can be as critical um and earnest and sincere, you know what I mean? And ideally has the same goals overall.
Yeah. Would
That's
y'all
really
say,
hard to find, I
would you
think.
say that you're alike in that? Like, y'all are similar people, or would you
Yeah,
say,
absolutely. I think in
oh,
that regard, like we're cut from the same cloth. Josh as well. Like the it doesn't work otherwise. Like building a creative team is way harder than any other thing I've tried to do in the creative field or in any other for that matter. Outside of raising a happy home or whatever. Like
yeah,
that's the hardest work, I think.
yeah. So, as a creative, and the distinguishment of, somebody that gets paid for the work, and then somebody that's an artist, or, I guess, like, do you define yourself as an artist, a designer? Is it a little bit of both? And, I mean, are there times when you're like, I think it's really speaks this way, and you kind of hold that artistic creativity to heart? How do you separate those two things? I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding between the two.
I don't know. I mean, that's a big question, dude. I think the difference between design and art is function. Art art's function is to simply exist. And not that that's a simple task, like that's a for something to or I would say for an artist to spend the time and the will to make something from nothing from their heads is a hard task already. Um, Design has to have that component. Like somebody still has to make it, but it has to communicate. Um, it has to serve a purpose, right? Like Milton Glaser says, to inform or delight, or to inform and delight. That's the role of design. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does. So going back through your history, when did you really realize that? Like, what was the, I don't know, was it something you did, or was it something you saw, or, a class you sat in, or something like that? When did the light bulb go off, that, like, oh, this is what it is. This is the purpose. This is what
I
I'm
don't
doing.
know. I don't know that it was a light bulb kind of moment. I think it was a cumulative kind of understanding, right? Like I certainly had heard, design has to do things like that's what they say, right? But I think to understand it in practice, for me anyway, it was just experience over time and picking apart other work, picking apart my own work, and trying to understand why it works or why it doesn't. And where it fails, and understanding the communicatory aspect of that is what is the chief concern in design, right?
Right.
If it doesn't do that job, it already fails. It can look however good or however bad, or based on trends or fashion or whatever, but if it doesn't communicate, it's it's already done. Like it's already not designed.
Right. So, all the jobs that you've had, all the work that you've done, rather, um, when was that? And, maybe there were, again, it's a cumulative set of moments, but, do you have any that really stand out to you as like, wow, like, people are actually using it the way that I want it to be used, or that it was meant to be used, or you can see, if it was wayfinding or something like that, you're like, wow, they went left and that was the direction they were supposed to go. Like, do you have any moments like that in your history?
No, I mean I do enjoy, pretty selfishly, like I like hearing that people have seen something and they like it. You know what I mean? Like I think what's strange is the stuff that I mean, we like doing kind of one-off designs, right? Like posters or campaigns for a thing. Um, those things inevitably are the ones that attract the most attention, but they're the shortest lived. You know what I mean? They're not part of a larger system or the stuff that we're actually more focused on as a studio typically. Um, so, but I think it just existing is kind of the value already to me. Like it's already exciting every time something launches, just because now it's there. You know what I mean? And we're pretty critical about what should be there. You know what I mean? Like we force ourselves not to clutter the world with noise, visual or otherwise.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm, let's say I'm a novice entrepreneur. Like I guess what kind of insight do you have for somebody, not even in a artistic or graphic or design way? I mean, it's all I guess design, but um, what kind of thought process do you need to instill or think about to really cut noise? I mean, that seems like a really deep, hard thing to do. Like, when do you realize, like, this is the lowest it can go, and still the highest it can be seen?
I think you have to start with the audience. Like, and that's the biggest pro tip I would give anybody for design, for entrepreneurship, for living their lives or whatever. Like, if you want to communicate with somebody, you need to empathize with who you're communicating with. Like, and that's literally it. Your work, your deeds, your creative output, everything will immediately be better. Like that's the easiest shortcut to better everything, is understand who you're talking to and understand, what they need to hear, how they need to hear things.
So you've been I would say, a pretty good communicator, um, since I've known you. Really, I mean, were you always that way? I mean, I know that you sort of self-ascribe yourself to be an introvert, and so how do you how have you formed that level of communication or identification? Is it a lot of introspection? Maybe this is a deep question. I don't know.
No, I think my parents more than anything else, like they they're both very verbose or can be. They like talking, and they like listening, at least most of the time, or most of my parents anyway. Um like I think that for me anyway, that started early, is like I got used to having to talk and I got used to having to listen. You know what I mean? But I think learning, it was certainly through bad experiences in communication that I learned that I needed to empathize more or be more active in my empathy, I guess. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's obviously, this is a hard set of lessons to learn if you're not, up to it, or if you're not really sure how to dig into it. So that
Well, I
probably
think
takes
like
time.
empathy for humans, I think comes naturally for most people, right? Like I think the levels of it differ from person to person. How much someone can empathize is different from person to person, right? But I'm saying the shortcut, even for someone who is naturally less empathetic, is just to understand their audience. You know what I mean? That's like the cheat sheet, because that's what empathy is understanding what your counterpart.
Yeah, their pain points, their you know wants, needs, stuff like that. Is that what you're
Yeah,
getting
all
at?
of it. The more you understand, the better you're going to be able to communicate. You know what I mean? We
Yeah,
have higher value communication between people you've known for a long time, people you've built rapport with because you've done more of it, right? You've listened more to what their background is, to what may inform their decisions.
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean I love conversation like that, because I think it's important for people to understand where to start. I think oftentimes, I mean, in this world of noise, you have a lot of people focusing on, they talk about, oh, you need to market. Well, what does that mean? Oh, you need all the social media. Well, why?
Right.
Um, and too often I think you're given a lot of advice that is really like a shotgun approach, and it's never specified. And so, I guess, how there's probably no real direct answer for this, but how would you, maybe it all goes back to the same point. How would you, decipher really what is accurate?
I think choose your signals wisely in the first place. Um, you know, I think you are the company that you keep, right? So like if this personality is agreeable to you or resonates with you to some degree, like if you understand yourself, you'll be able to understand why it resonates with you. And if that's a good person, you should listen. If it's a a good kind of friend or a bad kind of friend, right? Like the wrong crowd or the right crowd. But I think other than that, in deciding if it sounds right, you know what I mean? Like try it.
That
Like
seems that seems almost too reasonable.
well, I think there's not the secret code. I think of everything is there is no secret code. It's like you just kind of figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The the there's some phrase that people say about making decisions, right? Like any decision that can be easily reversed should be made as quickly as possible, right? Any decision that cannot be reversed should be made as late as possible. And I think that pans out. Like if it costs you nothing to try something new, especially when we're talking about marketing or are you going to spend these dollars here or whatever, you still need to measure the return on investment and all the other particulars, right? But like in weighing what you should do from the best anybody is going to tell you is what worked for them or what they've seen work for somebody else. You know what I mean? Mileage is always going to vary. So none of it matters until you try it.
Okay. Okay. So I guess moving forward even further, right now it's a weird time. I hear there's like killer hornets or something.
Right.
And that might be the most of our worries, right? No, just
The hits keep on coming right now. Yeah.
yeah, 2020 I think is looking pretty clear right now. I don't think we need hindsight on it. So,
Right. Yeah. It's
um,
a open and close bummer
yeah,
year.
might as well be. So a lot of people are going through stressful situations. A lot of people are going through ups and downs, and I mean, as a person that's in the service or professional services type category, I mean, I feel like you already have at least a little bit more understanding of what it is to have months where you're wondering, oh, is somebody going to pay me?
Right.
Do I need to go and find another job? Like,
Right.
so like
You're
what if
saying because of the business we're in, we're used to uh regular catastrophic events.
that's my guess, right? Is that
Yeah.
wrong?
I mean, no, I mean, we've certainly never dealt with anything like this. Um, and I think because yeah, we do have what I consider to be pretty severe ups and downs, like at least when they're happening, right? It's like, when is the next project coming through? We've only got X amount of dollars for payroll left, because we're off season or something cancels that, we expected not to cancel.
Right.
Um, when you're in it, it's the worst thing ever. It's always, at least for me, like I freak out about it every time. Um, my lady reminds me and my business partners remind me when they're not going through it with me that this is a cycle that we go through. You know what I mean? There is light on the other side. So as many contingencies as we've kind of planned for and the thicker skin that we've built up over these 7 years of going through that, I might be too gracious saying we've developed thicker skin than others, but we certainly never planned for a pandemic, right? Let alone a worldwide pandemic. So it's definitely different times, but I think we operate our company to just move to the next one, right? Like some projects are super fun, some projects are less than super fun, but we go through them and we do them. You know what I mean? And I think that's on one hand, that's the plight of entrepreneurship, but that's the flexibility that it allows, is that, if when the going gets rough or whatever, like do the rest.
Right. So I think that's pretty important, in terms of thoughts and stuff right now. But what do have y'all had any cancellations? Has this really disrupted your workflow? I don't know if
Yeah,
this
I
was
mean,
meant to
quite
be
a
high
bit.
season for
Like
you or not.
we're, like most, we're paying for things that we can't use right now. We're not able to be in community with each other in person. So that has its own kind of challenges with us as a creative team. That's how we started, ironically, was from our individual homes. But, the difficulty, I think, for our day-to-day is just managing time, right? It's like when we were working from home before, and I think that's why, like, this is not working from home. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as simple as just, oh, now we work from home again. There's this other component of like, if I need to get dog food or whatever pedestrian mundane task is now a whole thing, right? Like in like minor tasks now have become large to-dos. So, and the deliberation over how to get these minor things done or where to get toilet paper or whatever, right, jams up your day when you're still trying to run a business. And if you have a kid at home, that's a whole nother component, right? So
Right.
there's it's different for sure. And certainly, we've had work dry up. We had some cancellations. We're lucky that the clients who, we have long-standing relationships with are still keeping us, on their stack, I guess. But they're, I don't know how long any of that works, right? Like,
Right.
so in that regard, we're doing what we are prepared to do, which is to just keep showing up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Showing
So,
up online, at least.
as you think about this, and we were kind of joking about, you know, reopening the barbershops and stuff like that. I mean, probably, I don't know that you need that because I don't,
No,
yeah, you
I
don't
do
have
my hair
hair.
in my restroom. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are there key markers you're looking for to say things are on the up and up again? Are there things that you're like, you know what, I think it's okay. Like we can maybe start going back downtown more than maybe just a verbal, somebody stamps their hand on paper and says, hey, go back to work or whatever.
Um, I don't know. Like, I mean, the easiest answer to me is more testing, I guess. Like, I would not be confident there's a reason to go. Like, for me personally, I can do business with most of the people I was already regularly doing business with, right? There's a couple
Right.
taco shops and coffee shops that are my favorites that I can't see right now. You know what I mean? But outside of that, I can't see myself going and trying to go back to normal, whatever that is moving forward, until there's like huge moves on regular testing and availability of tests.
That makes sense. Is there a pivot that y'all have taken in terms of, just trying to open the door for additional cash flow? Um, different messaging that y'all have put out to say, hey, we're here and we're doing such and such, whatever different or else, or, if y'all need
No, I
X, we
mean,
can provide
I
it
don't need
sort
to
of thing.
know whether it's good or not. Um, but no, we're not at all. Like, and not really for any other reason other than just we don't. It's not something we normally do, right? Like, I think the people we have relationships with know that whatever the day is, whatever the time is, we're still around. Like, if we were closed, we would tell people we're closed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, business pivots and all that. I think collectively are spending more time on creative endeavors that are not billable work, which I think is a good thing anyway. It's something I wanted us to do as a studio before. Um, if that turns into other work, then that's great. But that would be the closest we could call, any kind of pivot.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um, what about your clients? Like the clients that you work with, maybe those that have dropped off or what have you, are they still coming to you for, hey, what should I do now?
Yeah,
Um,
here and there. I mean, I've talked to a few of them. Just because like we're friends in a lot of cases, so uh we've checked up on each other kind of on a personal level and then kind of talked about business and things like that. And I think like everybody is hurting, dude. Like especially, our friends and clients in service and in restaurant and hospitality and stuff, like they're all really, really hurting. Um and there's not a whole lot anybody can do other than continue to try to support them. You know what I mean? Locally, like you're, I don't know, dude. Like it sucks. Like it sucks all around.
yeah, no, I feel you. It's shitty. I mean, what do you do, right? I mean, there is
Right.
no silver bullet for these things. Those that have made pivots, some you can see for the better, and some you're just like, I don't. You kind of disgrace your own self by doing something like that. So
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think it's tough, especially when you have been doing your own thing, because a lot of people are in survival mode, right? So it's like, what can you do to make ends meet? And I think there's no, if you have people to support or just to, for your own self and like to feed yourself, do whatever you got to do. You know what I mean?
right,
I think entrepreneurs should feel better about doing that than anybody else. You know what I mean? Because that's been the point.
been the point. I like that. Um, Let me see what else would be useful to talk about, really, or cover. I mean, I feel like from that perspective, I've gotten a lot from just kind of hearing you talk through it, and there isn't a natural answer for much of this stuff, but I guess that's the way, like you said, entrepreneurs have always been or always do, and so I mean, it. I guess really thinking about that mindset. You have a lot of people running through feeling scared and stuff. Um, are there ways that you cope with that yourself, um, or
Uh,
things that y'all do
yeah,
to?
I mean, I think I by no means have it figured out, dude. Like it's a scary time. Like my lady is a ICU nurse here in town. It's bad there. It's bad everywhere, right? Like I think taking regular breaks, regular time, it's hard to know what you're supposed to care about right now, right? Like, are you supposed to care about solving some part of the pandemic through your business, right? Are you supposed to care about your neighbors? Are you supposed to care about your own safety and health and well-being and stuff like? And so splitting time between all of these kind of worries and concerns is exhausting. So I think the best anybody can do is take a nap. You know what I mean? Like have a nap.
Yeah.
Outside of that, dude, I think it's like take days as they come. And I think, you know, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial mindset, right? Like there is an expectation that you can go out and solve these things. Like people who go out and start their own companies somewhere inside feel like I can figure this out, right? Which is a good place to be in any kind of struggle or turmoil, is to have this positive mindset of like you can solve it. I think what is missed in entrepreneurism as a practice or as an ethos is being a decent fucking person, dude. Like we must, especially now, take into account how our problem solving activities impact our neighbor, right? And if we're failing to do that, there is no point in being an entrepreneur. Like we cannot succeed. Like entrepreneurism expects and requires community to exist. You know what I'm saying? You cannot sell anything to no one. There has to be another party for commerce to happen, right?
Yeah.
So even if the entrepreneurial person is the most selfish, the most self-interested, at some point they still have to realize your neighbor matters, at the very least as a customer. I would hope that most people can realize we all matter and must support each other because that's how we do. That is the right thing to do.
Right.
But I think we can figure it out, you know what I mean? But it is going to take individual people being good people. Like sweeping up after their neighbors sometimes. Certainly sweeping up after themselves though, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, like I feel like you sound like you're fairly optimistic about, you know, the community as a whole rebounding. If we take steps like that, really consideration of each other, kind of us first before me or you, kind of thing.
Right.
Um, you know, I mean, so for San Antonio specifically, you know, I don't know if there's any inherent issues or problems or shortcomings or anything like you think that we have to deal with specifically for our community. But is there anything that I mean, you have in terms of, you know, what you think might be a more local consideration for just dealing with this?
I don't know. Like how so? Specifically or generally?
I
Like
mean,
I think generally be a good neighbor. You know what I mean? If you can help somebody, whoever it is, help them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
In whatever way. It doesn't matter like big or small gestures or deeds or whatever, but I think do something for somebody and it works.
yeah. I mean, I guess that's sometimes the answers you give are just so straightforward. It's like obvious.
Well, I mean, like there are, you know, there are lists of places you can shop, right? There are um there is like let's buy gift cards and not cash them in until, right? Like there's all these things that can be done. So I'm saying, yeah, go do those things. Like be a little sweeter. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, that makes a
and
lot of sense.
wear a mask. If you go out around people, wear a mask. Like that's easy. It costs you nothing to put on a mask. I can't understand why I'm still seeing tough guys out on the street or in, you know what I mean? Like in stores refusing to wear masks. It costs you nothing. So outside of that,
Speaking of
I
people,
don't know.
yeah,
I don't know what else there is to be done, dude. Like take naps. You know what I mean? Do what you can. Take care of your loved ones and the people around you.
yeah.
And, you know, like be how your parents told you to be. Or how, you know, your hero behaves or whatever. Like that's what it requires, dude.
Okay. So in thinking about your business and you talked about, just now you mentioned be like your hero, or parents or what have you. Um, I guess who are you trying to be like, or maybe it's not so much who are you trying to be like, but who have you emulated? Who have you pulled stuff from that you really think is made an impact on you?
I mean, my family for sure first, you know. I think I had really good role models growing up, and even some of them family or friends of friends or whatever. Like I wasn't conscious that they were good role models, but I think I learned a lot about how to be sincere and how to be, you know, honest and to just try to be decent. Just try not to be an asshole from the people who, you know, who raised me,
Yeah,
for better or worse, you know, or even in spite of them.
right. And then so like on a business aspect, if you're thinking about things that you can improve, have there been anything things that y'all have doubled down on, sort of re looking at internally, like double checking your expenses, or just making sure that y'all are, I guess, being frugal, or.
Yeah, no, I mean on that side of things, where we were pretty well prepared. Like we have always run very, very lean, right? Like there's no exorbitant charges or like we're eating a lot less lunch. We haven't built a company lunch since this started. But I think more to do with the fact that we weren't downtown and it's the last thing on anybody's mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, outside of that though, like, you know, we negotiated with our landlord to make sure we weren't paying for parking we couldn't use. Um, you know, it's like the obvious things, yeah, like try not to pay for what you're not using.
Yeah, I feel like these are all like general business starting principles that people should ideally
Right.
have taken advantage of prior to any of this happening. But sometimes things get convoluted, and then you don't realize that you've been you know blowing money fast until it's far too late.
Right. Yeah, and that's something I can't speak on. Like, you know, we spend only ever as much as we have. Like, um, that's just how we've always run our shop because we are at the mercy of projects. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I mean that makes a lot of sense. So if you have, I guess not like there are a ton of people out there looking to start a new business at the moment, but for those of the people that might be considering starting something at a time like this, or just starting something in general, I mean, are there any considerations, or do you have like a entrepreneurship 101 message that you would give to them?
I think don't start anything now that is not your passion. I think probably don't start anything ever that is not your passion. I just don't like I understand the money making part of it, right? Like if you're going to be an absentee whatever or a, you know, I think for myself and how I wish other people were wired, I guess, was only do what you really care about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like figure out how to bill for it if it needs to be a financial thing, if it needs to be your job, right? Like figure out how to make money at it. But otherwise, I would hope that moving forward, what sticks is that people do not busy themselves with so much that is unnecessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that I'm a pro at that, like, but I'm saying that's a lesson I'm learning right now is like in business, yeah, like cut your expenses, but in your free time, in your life, cut your unnecessary time expenses, right?
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So I guess, as we're getting close to the end of the time block here, I wanted to do a little bit of back and forth in sort of a chiding way. I just want to ask you a few quick fire questions, sort of a this or that, if you will. Playing a little bit on stuff I know about you and stuff I don't, right? So first question I have for you is MS Paint or Adobe Photoshop?
Photoshop.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Let's see. Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Electric or gas?
Gas.
Okay. The Spurs or anybody else?
Spurs.
Yeah. Really, working for someone else or working for yourself?
Working for yourself.
Yeah, I dig it. I mean, really, that's all I had, dude. At this point, it's now I'm in the nether regions of grabbing. So yeah.
Well, these
Uh,
were fun questions to think about and answer. I
yeah,
hope I didn't
they're
ramble too
important
much.
life questions for sure. Um, well, I mean, I appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon or this morning rather. And I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording. But I really appreciate you sharing your insight. Do you have any kind of last words or leaving thoughts or anything like that you'd like to share with?
No, just well, maybe I think, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be invited. And thanks to anybody who listened for their attention. And I think be sincere would be my parting words and even last words.
Your epitaph.
Yeah.
I dig it. Okay. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. And this is Darby with Heavy Heavy. Is there a good way to get a hold of you if people have questions or just want to connect?
Heavyheavy.com is the spot that has it all.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on this Fresh Perspectives. Again, this is Launch SA. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.